Hey, I see you.
Oh,
How are you?
hey.
The black one looks good. I like that.
Thanks. Thanks.
Yeah.
Hello.
I have a picture today.
You have a picture today. I see you.
Yeah. What did you do?
What?
No, I'm just messing with you. Uh, do you know
Numbers 8-ish. Somewhere around in there.
numbers English? Not. Did I just roll right by it? I thought I
Uh-huh.
just rolled right. Oh, numbers and numbers eight. Somewhere you said.
Yeah.
Okay.
More or less.
Give or take.
Yeah, I think fun.
Just a little bit.
Tired. Okay, now it's gonna rain again.
Of course it is.
That's like the fourth time it's been like sunny, rain, sunny, rain, sunny, rain, sunny, rain, sunny,
Right.
rain. I pulled all the laundry in because I'm done playing that game.
Gotcha. Everybody's taking the time coming in today. What are you giggling about over there?
So
What?
mom,
What?
mom sent me a picture of like what she just picked out of her garden, and it's four jalapeno peppers, and then these little tiny things next to it that look like beans. And I'm like, what are those? Potatoes. Those are her potatoes.
Saddest little potatoes ever.
I know. It's like, can you see? Like
Oh my gosh, those are
the
little
world's
peanuts.
smallest potato.
Oh my god, at least she's got the peppers. Peppers are nice.
Oh well. Oh, either that or those are big peppers. I don't know, but I think those are tiny
Yeah, I
potatoes.
think I think they're very tiny peppers.
Oh, that's funny.
The little screen keeps jumping around on me. I don't know why. It's like you go just in your back. You go
It's kind of
on your
flashing
back.
on my screen too. I don't know what that's about.
Yeah, maybe it's time to get you
Maybe
a.
it's my $2.50 webcam.
You're, it's trying to come back to China and it's having problems.
I mean, it arrived in a completely unmarked box with no documentation whatsoever. So it was
It's
the
scary,
quite
right?
literally the cheapest thing that ever. And I have been using it for like 3 years. So
No, I'm looking at getting you a different one. Hold on.
a real one, a real webcam.
Mhm.
That'd
And
be
since you
great.
spend so much time on
Hello,
there, there's no reason.
everybody.
Hey,
Hey, Susan,
Sue.
how are you?
I'm getting involved in a discussion between the two of you. I didn't mean to do that.
We were
Oh, no,
just
you're
talking about
fine.
my webcam
And how
and
terrible
how
it is.
it was very cheap, but it's lasted 3 years. So
So if I get, my thinking is if I get an expensive one, it'll last like 6 months.
probably.
1080p should be good enough, right? Oh yeah, those
I
prices are
think
much
that's
better.
fine.
Okay, on it.
In a hotel room?
I am. I'm working an emergency water treatment contract, so I'm traveling. I've been in Asheville since the hurricane.
Do you ever get to go home to Rachel?
I do. I get to go home every Shabbat, so I'm home Friday afternoons, and then I have to go back on Sundays. It's not ideal, but it's a living, and it's just temporary, just for
Do you
right
think
now.
you're going to be doing it once the hurricane damage is finally repaired?
That's the $1 million question, or actually $100 million question. We're in contract negotiations right now, and we're trying to see what the next 6 months looks like, and then yeah, I think we'll look at everything after that. But that's above my pay grade. I don't do the contract negotiations. The city of Asheville would like to have us here for the next 3 to 4 years, until they get their water treatment plant built, or at least all the new stuff they want to add to it built. And it takes about that long to go through the permitting process and construction and everything. So, yeah, I don't know if I want to be here that long, but looks like we're here for a little while anyway.
Which means you'll be living up there?
Yeah, off
I
and
mean,
on.
in a hotel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if things go longer, so the RFP went out today. They have to have the responses to the city by the end of the month, and we should know pretty quickly after that. And if we end up getting the extension through for 6 months, I'll just have my company put me in that Airbnb. So I'll be in the house, and I'll have to move my stuff around when I run back and forth. So, but
And
there are
Rachel
nice
can
things.
come and visit you.
Yeah, she comes to visit me sometimes anyway. We end up going to lunch or dinner or something.
You don't think about selling your existing house and moving up there, do you, Rachel?
I don't know.
No,
Okay.
there's no way. There's no way I'm doing that.
I like it here.
I do too. I wish I could be there.
Well, the weather makes fools of all of us. What can I say?
I
You all
know.
bundled up. Is it cold?
Um, I'm always cold.
I
Um,
understand.
but it's I would guess in the 50s and raining.
Oh,
Oh,
that's
that's cold.
that's
That's
pretty
cold.
that's chilly for June.
Looks like John is joining us.
Has it been this cold and wet up there as it has been here?
No, and it's supposed to my daughter, who of course none of you know, uh, they have a home in Cambridge, but they also have a big farm up in Vermont. And
Uh-huh.
she said, but you have to be looking at me. She said, because of the rain and the cold, all the plants look like this.
Oh,
I understand completely. Oh.
It should, right? It's been extremely cold and very rainy.
yeah.
Same,
I think it's
same here.
rained every day for the last several weeks,
Mm-hmm.
which
I
is good because I
vote
don't
for
have to water
that.
my garden, but how are you, John? Is it rainy
Good.
there?
Yes. And how are you, Chris? I noticed that beard's a little longer.
Yeah, I'm not. Rachel's not here to hold me down to trim it, so
Yeah.
I'll be home Friday evening. So maybe she
Starting
can.
when?
I'll be home Friday evening, so maybe
Oh,
she can hold
great.
me down and cut it. Yeah.
And when there's Fred.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we've sure had a wet spring. I think that accounts for
Yeah.
most of the eastern United States.
Yeah.
You got it.
Wet and cold, John.
Well, I can't vouch for the cold, but it did cool down a little. I know where you are. It's probably much cooler.
I said today it's in the 50s, though it was
Ooh,
in the
Oh.
70s yesterday.
Mhm.
hmm. Well, I'm glad there's a lot of people that love to live in that kind of climate. That's why I chose to, when I retired, to live below I-10.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I was down there with Fred for 25 years, but after my husband died, the children said, we don't care which one of us you move close to, but you have to move closer to one of us. So I moved closer to my most reliable daughter.
Very good. Well,
Okay.
I applaud you. And you know what?
Okay.
We're all fairly close to one another here with Zoom.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
15,
Okay.
20 years ago, this would have been impossible.
Right?
Right.
True. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we can go ahead and get started. The parsha for the coming week is called Shalach. It's kind of an interesting story. We're starting on chapter 13 in the book of Numbers. And it starts off, basically, we're at the end of 2 years now in the Sinai Desert. It's been 2 years since the exodus from Egypt. They finally reached Canaan. They're ready to cross the Jordan. And so the text starts off, the Lord spoke unto Moses, saying, Send thou men that they may spy out the land of Canaan, which I give to the children of Israel. Of every tribe of their fathers send ye a man, every one a prince among them. And Moses sent them from the wilderness of Paran, according to the commandment of the Lord, all of them men who are heads of the children of Israel. And then with the next few verses that follows, just a long list of names, the actual 12 spies who he sent out from each tribe. And the story actually picks up on verse 17. Um, and then the story of the spies actually goes from 17 to 24. Somebody want to read those verses?
Sure, I'll go ahead and lead off. Moses sent them to spy out the land of Canaan and said to them, Go up into the Negev and go up into the hill country and see what the land is, and whether the people who dwell in it are strong or weak, whether they are few or many, and whether the land that they dwell in is good or bad, and whether the cities that they dwell in are camps or strongholds, and whether the land is rich or poor, and whether there are trees in it or not. Be of good courage and bring some of the fruit of the land. Now the time was the season of the first ripe grapes. So they went up and spied out the land from the wilderness of Zin to Rehob, near Lebo Hamath. They went up into the Negev and came to Hebron, Alman, Sheshai, and Talmai, the descendants of Anak, were there. Hebron was built 7 years before Zoan in Egypt. And they came to the valley of Eshcol and cut down from there a branch with a single cluster of grapes, and they carried it on a pole between the two of them. They also brought some pomegranates and figs. That place was called the Valley of Eshcol, because of the cluster that the people of Israel cut down from there.
Yeah, that ends that section. Basically, they survey the whole land. The wilderness of Zin is in the Negev, and this place of Lebo Hamat is actually up in Syria, a little bit north of Damascus. So
Mm.
they start at the very south and actually go beyond what the borders of Israel would be today. They went all the way past what would be the northern border of Israel today, and then back again. The name Eshkol actually in Hebrew means a cluster. And apparently there was according to the story, the cluster of grapes was so big that it took two guys to carry it. There was a
Yeah,
pole.
that's a
And
lot of
actually,
grapes.
yeah, if you've ever seen the logo of the Ministry of Tourism of the State of Israel, they took that for their logo. You see these two guys, one behind the other. They've got a pole over their shoulders and this enormous cluster of grapes, about as big as a man, which is on the pole between them. So it became the logo for the modern tourist ministry in Israel. Okay. And then the downside of the story is when they get back and report to Moses. And this is from verses 25 through 33. Someone wants to read that.
Fred, that must have
Yeah.
taken a phenomenal amount of time.
Well, according to what we're going to read, it took 40 days. Because everything in the Bible takes 40 days.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
the favorite number. But you figure, to go on foot, assuming they were doing this on foot, they may have been riding donkeys, who knows?
And they
But
didn't know where they were going.
exactly. From north to south in modern Israel is about 300 miles. And they went several miles beyond that into what's now Syria. So let's say they went close to 400, a round trip of 800 miles, which, in 40 days, that's moving along.
Hmm.
It's possible, though. I could see you could do it 800 miles in 40 days. It's possible. But that's really pushing it. But again, you have to take biblical numbers with kind of a grain of salt, because like I said, everything goes for 40 days in the Bible. It's
Yeah,
almost like a magic number. So
yeah.
I wouldn't take it literally.
The reason I was mentioning that is we just finished a cruise where Lewis and Clark went from the Rocky Mountains to the Pacific. And
Mhm.
that when the Nez Perce Indians in the eastern boundaries of Washington State found Lewis and Clark's team, they were just about done.
Mhm.
And I'm thinking, you know, traveling in the Rocky Mountains is one thing, but in the desert and all that heat and everything is another. I mean,
Yeah.
that's quite a trek.
Although when they got out of the Negev, they would have, gone through a more fertile area. They were probably following the Jordan River, northward once they got past the Dead Sea. Yeah, but you're right, but even in optimal terrain to cover, well over 300 miles each way, probably closer to 400.
Yeah,
It even riding on donkeys, maybe that's still, that's pushing it. That's
yeah.
yeah. Anyway, the next section is when they get back, which is verses 25 through 33. Someone want to take that?
I got it. At the end of 40 days, they returned from scouting the land. They went straight to Moses and Aaron and the whole Israelite community at Kadesh in the wilderness of Paran. And they made their report to them, to the whole community, and they showed them the fruit of the land. This is what they told them. We came to the land you sent us to. It does indeed flow with milk and honey, and this is its fruit. However, the people who inhabit the land, the country, are powerful, and the cities are fortified and very large. Moreover, we saw the Anakites there. Amalekites dwelt in the Negev region. Hittites, Jezebites, and Amorites inhabit the hill country, and Canaanites dwell by the sea and along the Jordan. Caleb hushed the people before Moses and said, "Let us by all means go up, and we shall gain possession of it. We shall surely overcome it." But the other man who had gone up with him said, "We cannot attack that people, for it is stronger than we." Thus they spread calumnies or calumny, what's a weird word, among the Israelites about the land they had scouted, saying, the country that we traversed and scattered is one that devours its settlers. All the people that we saw in it are of great size. We saw the Nephilim there. The Anakites are part of the Nephilim. And we looked like grasshoppers to ourselves. And so we must have looked to them.
So in other words, it's a great place, but we can't do it. A couple of things are interesting about this. These sons of Anak and the Nephilim, it's really a reference way back to early in Genesis. I think it's like chapter 3 or 4 of Genesis. They said that the children of God took the daughters of man. There was probably some race of superhumans that the Bible refers to at that time. They're called the Nephilim, and the verb naphal in Hebrew means to fall. And so one translation will be the fallen ones. And there's one theory some of the rabbis had, these were fallen angels who were banished to earth, and they presented as giant men. They were a race of giants. And this is what, the spies are claiming they're saying. The other interesting thing is it's Caleb that does this. Well, actually, there are 2 spies that bring back a good report, Caleb and Joshua. It's the other 10, that say we can't do it. But here, at least in this initial part of the story, it only mentions Caleb. They're the only ones. And then going over to chapter 14, here you have the reaction of Moses, and the way they handle that. And that's verses 1 through 10 in chapter 14. Someone want to read that one?
I'll do that.
Okay.
Where are you? Oh, there you are.
I was
Here
eating.
he just appeared.
Yeah. No, I've been listening since the beginning.
He was eating dinner.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, work got me late tonight. The whole community broke into loud cries, and the people wept that night. All the Israelites rallied against Moses and Aaron. If only we had died in the land of Egypt. Once again, that they whined.
Mhm.
The whole community shouted at them, or if only we might die in this wilderness. Why has Adonai taken us to the land to fall by the sword? Our wives and children will be carried off. It would be better for us to go back to Egypt. And they said to one another, let us head back for Egypt. Then Moses and Aaron fell on their faces before all the assembled congregation of Israelites. And Joshua, son of Nun, and Caleb, son of Jephunneh, of those who had scouted the land, rent their clothes and exhorted the whole Israelite community. The land that we traversed and scouted is an exceedingly good land. If pleased with us, Adonai will bring us into that land, a land that flows with milk and honey, and give it to us. Only you must not rebel against Adonai. Have no fear of the people of the country, for they are our prey. Their protection has departed from them, but Adonai is with us. Have no fear. As the whole community threatened to pelt them with stones, the presence of Adonai appeared in the tent of the meeting to all the Israelites. And Adonai
So
said,
here, now stop at that point. So here you have the first major rebellion against Moses' leadership. And notice here they do mention Caleb, and Joshua. Some scholars think there's probably 2 different traditions that are combined in this story. One where Caleb alone, is the one good spy. Then another one where Caleb and Joshua, are both here. And because the ironic verse here is we'd rather die in the wilderness. And of course, as you see what's going to happen, that's exactly what's going to happen to them. If you want to die in the wilderness, you're going to die in the wilderness. That's going to be God's punishment. The interesting thing is, a lot is Caleb. He's one of the 2 good guys. One of the guys who stands up and tries to talk to people into trusting in God and going over. And of course, Caleb in Hebrew means a dog. A Caleb is a dog in Hebrew. But it's kind of really odd because, particularly in the modern state of Israel, animal names are very popular for men. You have Ari, which is a lion. You have Dove, which is a bear. Tzvi is a deer, Zev is a wolf, but there are no Calebs. For some reason, Caleb never caught on as a popular Jewish name, even though over here Caleb is one of the good guys, in the Bible. And in general, for some reason, the Bible doesn't like dogs. Every time you see dogs mentioned in the Bible, it's always in some negative light, which is kind of odd when you think these people are shepherds and herdsmen. Where you think, they would have done, you really wonder why they didn't do what the Europeans did, and breed and train dogs to work with them. But apparently they didn't. There's no mention of dogs anywhere, in a positive way, working with the shepherds. And anytime a dog is mentioned in the Bible, it's in some negative connotation, which is maybe why Caleb never caught on, as a popular Hebrew name. Um, and
That's
then
interesting.
Yeah. Then the next 10 verses is 11 through 20, where you get God's reaction to all this. So 11 through 20, someone want to read that?
And the Lord said to Moses, how long will this people spurn me? And how long will they have no faith in me, despite all the signs that I have performed in their midst? I will strike them with pestilence and disown them, and I will make of you a nation far more numerous than they. But Moses said to the Lord, when the Egyptians from whose midst you brought of this people your might, hear the news, they will tell it to the inhabitants of the land. Now that they have heard that you, O Lord, are in the midst of this people, that you, O Lord, appear in plain sight when your cloud rests over them, and when you go before them in the pillar of a cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. If then you slay the people to a man, the nations will have heard your fame and will say, it must be because the Lord was powerless to bring that people into the land he promised them on the oath that he slaughtered them in the wilderness. Therefore I pray, let my Lord's forbearance be great as you have declared, saying, the Lord slow to anger and abounding in kindness, forgiving iniquity and transgression, yet not remitting all punishment, but visiting the iniquities of fathers upon children, upon the third and fourth generation. Pardon, I pray, the iniquity of this people according to your great kindness, as you have forgiven this people ever since Egypt.
Then verse 20, I think the Lord said, I have pardoned according to thy word. You may remember there's something very familiar about this. This is exactly the same response after the incident of the golden calf. When Moses comes down, the first time from Sinai with the law, and the people are dancing around the golden calf. And God says the same thing, that I've had it with this people, I'm going to destroy them, and I'm going to start with you, meaning Moses, and make a new people. And this is exactly the same thing all over again. And the argument that Moses is using here is exactly the same argument that he used before. He's appealing to God's vanity, basically. What he's saying is, if you destroy this people in the wilderness, and this whole big project was started off with the 10 plagues and splitting the sea and giving the law, all this stuff. And then in the end, it just petered out and they never came to anything. How's it going to make you look? What are the other gods going to think? You know, it's really appealing to God's vanity, and it works. God decides to let it go on. The other interesting thing is that verses 19 and 20, where Moses says, pardon, I pray thee the iniquity of this people according to the greatness of our loving kindness, and according as thou hast forgiven this people from Egypt until now. And the Lord said, I have pardoned according to thy word. The rabbis took those two verses, and they're actually part of the Yom Kippur service. We read those two verses several times as part of a Yom Kippur liturgy. Because then God does agree to let the people survive for the time being, but then starting with 21 through 24, he decides what he's going to do. Well, actually, it's 21 through 38 is kind of a long section. Somebody wanted to take that one on.
I have forgiven according to your
Okay.
word, and yet as I live, Let the Lord's glory fill all the earth, for all the men who have seen my glory and my signs that I did in Egypt and in the wilderness, yet have tried me 10 times over and have not heeded my voice. They shall never see the land that I swore to their fathers, and all who despise me shall not see it. But my servant Caleb, inasmuch as there was another spirit with him, and he followed after me, I shall bring him to the land to which he comes, and his seed will take hold of it, and the Amalekite and the Canaanite dwell in the valley. Tomorrow turn and journey onward in the wilderness by the way of the Red Sea. And the Lord said to Moses and to Aaron, saying, How long for this evil community that raises against me the complaints of the Israelites? That which they complain against me I have heard. Say to them, As I live, the Lord declares, just as you have spoken in my hearing, so will I do to you. In this wilderness your corpses will fall, and all your reckoned ones from 20 years old and up, for you have complained against me. You shall never come into the land about which I lifted up my hand, vowing to make you dwell within it, except for Caleb, son of Jephunneh, and Joshua, son of Nun, and your little ones, of whom you said they would become booty. I shall bring them, and they will know the land that you cast aside. And your own corpses will fall in this wilderness, and your sons will be herdsmen in the wilderness 40 years. And they will bear your whoring until your corpses come to an end in the wilderness. By the number of days that you scouted the land, 40 days, a day for a year, a day for a year. You will bear your crimes 40 years, and you will know what it is to thwart me. I, the Lord, have spoken. I will not do this to all this evil community that joins forces against me. In this wilderness shall they come to an end, and there shall they die. And the men whom Moses had sent to scout the land, who came back and set all the community complaining against him, putting forth an ill report about the land, the men who put forth an ill and evil report of the land died in the scourge before the Lord. And Joshua the son of Nun and Caleb son of Jephunneh were left alive from those men who had gone to scout the land.
Yeah. So basically, the other 10 spies, they die right away of some unspecified plague, but the others are going to just basically just walk back and forth, in the Sinai Desert for the next 38 years until that congregation dies off. And actually,
But
Joshua
it,
and Caleb are the only two that do survive. Even Moses and Aaron and Miriam, all of them die, in the Sinai Desert before crossing there. So there are only going to be two people left. Of course, you can imagine what morale was like from then on for the next 38 years.
Yeah.
I
the
mean,
but it isn't part of the basis of the of the 12 scouts and 10 given the um, misinformation part of the reason the minion is 10.
that's one of the theories, yeah. There's a whole lot of different theories about why it takes 10 people to make a minion. The one that most people like best is the one back, in Genesis, where God tells Abraham, I'm going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. And Abraham says, well, what if there are 50 righteous people? So God said, well, I'll spare it for that. Then Abraham says, well, what about 45? They go back and forth, and God's bottom number is 10. There are 10 righteous people in the city who'll save Sodom. And that's one theory. The other theory is this one. It was referring to the 10 evil people, making up a congregation. And there's actually another one in the book of Ruth. If you look at the ending of the book of Ruth, when Boaz decides to marry Ruth and redeem the land, for Naomi's family, he does this in public. It's a public ceremony. And he calls 10 people together to witness it. So there's a third example of 10 people being necessary for something in the Bible. And nobody really knows exactly where the rabbis got the 10 from, but those are the three most popular theories.
It kind of sounds like the 40 days.
It's sort of like that, one of these
It's a
magic
good
numbers the
number.
Bible likes, 40, 70, 3, 7, 10. They're all in there. Right. Um, but a lot of the rebellion and stuff that goes on, we're going to read about it in the rest of Numbers. You think these are people, you can, like I said, you can imagine what morale must be like. I mean, they're basically just going to run around the desert in circles, essentially, until they die off for 38 more years. So you have a totally demoralized group of people. Although they do make an attempt to try to atone for it, and that's verses 39 through 45. Somebody want to read that?
Sure, I'll go ahead. When Moses told these words to all the people of Israel, the people mourned greatly, and they rose early in the morning and went up to the heights of the hill country, saying, "Here we are. We will go up to the place that the Lord has promised, for we have sinned." But Moses said, "Why not are you transgressing the command of the Lord when that will not succeed? Do not go up, for the Lord is not among you, lest you be struck down before your enemies. For there the Amalekites and the Canaanites are facing you, and you shall fall by the sword. Because you have turned back from following the Lord will not be with you. They presume to go up to the heights of the hill country, although neither the ark of the covenant of the Lord nor Moses departed out of the camp. Then the Amalekites and the Canaanites who lived in that land in the hill country came down and defeated them and pursued them even to Hormath.
So basically, what they seem to be doing really just overreacting. They start off by saying these people are too strong for us. We can't beat them. We shouldn't even try. And now they're trying maybe to show God, okay, we're not afraid. We can do we're going to try and do this, even they're not in the way God commanded. And it turned out to be a disaster for them. That sort of ends that episode. Chapter 15 though goes back to a totally different subject. And here they just start talking again about the sacrifices for various kinds of sin, which really is not the most thrilling thing in the Bible. But there are two short sections that end this portion that are kind of interesting. One of them starts on verse 32 in chapter 15. And it goes from 32 through 36. It's really a short story.
I'll read it.
Okay.
Once the Israelites were in the wilderness, they came upon a man gathering wood on the Sabbath day. Those who found him as he was gathering wood brought him before Moses and Aaron and the community leadership. He was placed in custody, for it had not been specified what should be done to him. Then Adonai said to Moses, "The party in question shall be put to death. The community leadership shall pelt him with stones outside the camp." So the community leadership took him outside the camp and stoned him to death, as Adonai had commanded Moses.
Well, yeah, that's basically back in Exodus. Actually, there are verses that say that the penalty for desecrating the Sabbath is death. And here you have the first case where someone was actually executed, for he was gathering firewood apparently on the Sabbath. And this was a really big problem, for the later rabbis, because basically, if you really were to apply that strictly, the death penalty for not observing the Sabbath properly, there'd probably be about maybe 300 Jews left in the world today. So the rabbis realized they had to do something about that. That this wasn't going to work. And so, there's a long section on this in the Talmud. And what they did was what they did with a lot of laws that they didn't want to really have to carry out. They just put a whole lot of legal obstacles into ever convicting anybody of this. The idea was that the man had to know what he was doing was not permitted. Uh, if no one had told him that it was not permitted, then he's not guilty. He had to be informed by two people that what he was doing was illegal, and then two other witnesses have to testify that they saw him being advised that what he was doing was not permitted, and that he did it anyway. And then there's a whole lot of stuff they added to that. And basically they just made it so difficult, that nobody was ever going to get convicted and actually executed, for breaking the Sabbath. I mean, they realized, even though Jews in the Greco-Roman period may have been more observant than most Jews are now, the death penalty for breaking the Sabbath just wasn't going to work as a practical thing. So the idea was that the death penalty was put in, just to illustrate how important the Sabbath is. And it's the only ritual observance in Judaism for which there is a death penalty. Every other thing that you have the death penalty for is either murder, idolatry, incest, or adultery. Basically, this is the only ritual observance that carries the death penalty, which sort of just illustrates the importance of the Sabbath. It's also the only ritual observance which is part of the Ten Commandments. And so, and this sort of sets a precedent. And again, the rabbis of the Greco-Roman period realized that they had to do something about this because it wasn't going to work if they actually read this literally and carried it out. And then there's one more section to this. The parsha actually ends with it, which is the commandment to wear fringes. And that one starts with verse 37 and goes to the end of the chapter, just a few verses. Someone wants to read that.
I'll finish it. Adonai said to Moses as follows: Speak to the Israelite people and instruct them to make for themselves fringes on the corners of their garments throughout the ages. Let them attach a cord of blue to the fringe at each corner. That shall be your fringe. Look at it and recall the commandments of the Lord and observe them, so that you do not follow your heart and eyes in your lustful urge. Thus you shall be reminded to observe all my commandments and to be holy to your God. I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. I am your God, Adonai.
So this is the commandment to wear the talit, basically. Although actually, it doesn't really say to wear a talit just when you're praying. It really says to wear fringes all the time. And this actually is what the Haredi or ultra-Orthodox Jews do. They have an undergarment, which is basically just sort of a rectangular piece of cloth. And it has a hole in the center so it can go over the head like a poncho, basically. But then at each corner, each of the four corners of the rectangle, you have the fringes. What they do is put it on, and then they pull the fringes out so it hangs over their belt so that they are visible. Most other Jews don't go this far, and they wear it only at prayer in the form of a talit. Although it's interesting, the rabbis decided that they took that verse that you should look at it and remember the commandments of the Lord. They decided that the talit should only be worn for the morning service, because that's when it's light and you can look at it, and it should not be worn for the evening service. And that's where we get that the difference. The only time actually, and this is a rabbinic tradition, they began in the Roman period. The only time we ever wear a talit in the evening is for the evening of Yom Kippur, for the Kol Nidra service. But otherwise, it's only worn for the morning service. And there's really no specification about the talit itself. Talit really is just a Hebrew word, generic word for any kind of outer garment. Traditionally, they're made of wool, and they're accented with black or navy blue stripes. But you see a lot of modern talit. Can be any color, any pattern. Some of them are pretty garish, actually. Some of them are really kind of nice, especially since women get to participate in the synagogue service now. You have a lot of talits, which are designed for women. And so you get a lot more color and design and stuff into it. But there are really no rules about that, because the talit is not what gives it its religious significance. It's the fringes. They're the only things that really count. It also mentions here that in the fringes, you have to put a thread of blue into each corner. And this became a controversial thing later on because the thread of blue, that it was a blue dye. I think I probably mentioned this before, but it's actually made from a marine snail, a mollusk that lived in the Eastern Mediterranean. And the snail makes this clear secretion. And if you expose it to heat and sunlight, it will oxidize. And depending on how long you expose it, you can get a bright blue color, probably what we would call a royal blue, which is what they're talking about here. It's called techelet in Hebrew. Or you can get a purple color, which is called argamon. Uh, the problem got to be that the blue and the purple particularly was harder to make. It was very valuable, very costly, and the people who in the biblical times lived to the north of the Israelites in what's now Lebanon actually were the main traders in it, and they were called Phoenicians, which is really from the Greek word for purple. That's how the Phoenicians got their name. They were the big traders in this purple dye and apparently it was rare enough and expensive enough that during the Roman period, only the emperor wore it. You know, taking the purple was a way of saying that you had become emperor. You are now wearing the purple. The problem with the blue dye was that eventually the mollusk became an endangered species, probably just from overuse. The problem was that each mollusk only produces a few drops of secretion. So literally you need thousands of them to make any huge amount of the dye, which is probably why they say only a thread rather than having all the fringes be blue. And so for a while, the blue wasn't available. And in the modern era, of course, you know, you can make artificial dyes any color you want to. And there was a big debate among many of the Orthodox rabbis. Is it okay to use artificial blue for your fringes? Or can you only use the biblical blue, you know, made the biblical way? And they split on that. So that a lot of modern talit really only have white fringes. They don't have the blue fringe in there.
Yeah, none
I
of them in the
remember reading,
synagogue do. None in the back.
yeah, typically most talit made now, they don't try to use blue at all. They just have the white fringes. But I remember reading an article, it's probably 15 or 20 years ago now, that there were a couple of Israeli marine biologists that were trying to bring this mollusk back, you know, trying to breed it, you know, and create enough of them again so you could have the biblical blue. And I haven't seen any follow-up of that. I don't know if they've ever gotten to where they're making the biblical blue again or not. So.
So, like, my understanding is that yes, you can, and you can buy them with that not everyone accepts
Really?
it because of the process and everything, but yes, you can buy some that are supposedly kosher with a blue thread,
With
and
the
they are
biblical
much,
blue.
much, much more expensive than the plain
They
white
are,
ones.
yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Which really makes you wonder, you know, when you because you know, when we read the details back in Exodus, when you're reading the details about the building of the sanctuary, and they talk about the colors, and everything is techelet, argamon, or the other color was toalat shani, which is translated as worm scarlet. They call it that because it's made from a little bug that actually lives on tree branches, but it looks kind of like a worm. And it's from that bug that you get it from. And of course, from the Latin for worm is where you get the color. Vermilion is the other color. But you know what they talk about in the sanctuary is whole you know pieces of cloth made with this blue dye. And if you look at what they did in the sanctuary, it would have taken gallons of that blue dye, you know, to do everything they did in building the sanctuary. And yet they hadn't reached them, you know, where did they get all this from? You know,
Right.
it's one of these again, one of these unbelievable details about the sanctuary. You know, they had over a ton of gold. They had, you know, gallons of this blue dye, all of which it's very unlikely, you know, that anybody could have had in the desert then.
Plus, my understanding is it's a very complicated photochemical reaction that can go wrong in numerous more ways than it can go right.
Ways, yeah.
Yeah.
You don't have a reference on the chemistry of that, do you?
I might. I could find it. I'll see what I can
Okay,
find, but I
that's your
have read about
assignment.
it.
that's your assignment for next week.
Okay, I'll find
To
it.
bring us up to date.
We'll
on the blue
expect a
dye.
full detailed written report.
We could have like a
Right.
chemical reactions and
On the
then
biochemistry of the blue dye,
And
right?
yeah, I'm actually looking at the structures right now, and it looks like, I mean, it's very similar to indigo. I mean, yeah. Anyway, chemistry nerds, we'll go back to our seats.
Okay, all right. Yeah, by the way, it's interesting, there's always a Haftorah reading, a reading from outside the Torah, which is always included, after you do the Torah reading. And it's always picked to have some kind of connection to what you read in the Torah. And actually, the Haftorah reading we're going to read on Saturday is from the book of Joshua, and it's about spies again. You remember Joshua sends out 2 spies. They've already crossed the Jordan, but he's getting ready to attack Jericho. That's going to be the first city that they take. And so he sends out 2 spies, to spy out Jericho. And so that's sort of the parallel to the story, to the Torah Parsha, which has the story about the spies in it. Actually, the Parsha next week is even more interesting. It's about the rebellion of Korach, Moses' cousin, who raises a rebellion against him in the desert. Starting with chapter 16. So we'll be starting with chapter 16 next week.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
thank you, Fred.
Thanks,
Any
Fred.
questions?
And I'll look
Any
forward to
questions,
that
comments?
report.
Yeah, I want to know about the blue
Okay.
dye
A
next
little
week.
PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah.
Okay. If
Have
you
a
don't have a
good week,
screen share,
everybody.
yeah. If you
Color
can
and
just screen share, you
footnoted
can show us the
with
formulas.
references on the bottom, please.
Right,
Okay. All right.
Okay. See you guys next week.
All right.
See ya.
Bye.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Fred.
Fred.
Bye. Bye.